SwayamPrabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello dear learners, welcome again to another topic of the course of Fundamentals of Public Economics. See, till now we have dealt with an important aspect of public economics and policy measure of the government, that is the principles of taxation, how or what things should be kept in mind while taxing or imposing taxation, whether be it direct tax or indirect tax, types of taxes. And in the previous lecture we have also dealt with what are the various issues that arise in front of government, that arose in front of government, and how the government has made necessary reforms so that the problem of evasion, so that the problem of avoidance can be dealt with. Now, one was the aspect of public revenue, one was the aspect of income of the government. Another aspect what we have to deal with in public economics, and an important aspect, is the aspect of expenditure, the scope of expenditure. When government takes or gets income in the form of maybe taxes or non-tax revenue, the government spends that amount, since the state is a welfare state. So, the state spends that amount, and that becomes the importance of public expenditure. So, today in the lecture we will be dealing with the subject matter of public economics, specifically with the public expenditure. So, the topics that will be covered today would include public expenditure, classification of public expenditure, why over the period of time we see that public expenditure has grown, what are the theoretical aspects of public expenditure in the form of theories of public expenditure, and the principle or the canons of public expenditure. As the principles or canons were important in case of taxation, so the principles of canons are important in case of public expenditure as well. So, first and foremost, let us deal with what is public expenditure. Public expenditure, as the name suggests, it is expenditure of the state, of the public, of the authority. So, what kind of expenditure, where they are spending? So, basically it is any expense, any expenditure that is incurred by the government, that is incurred by the public authority for the economy, for the individuals, or on itself. So, any expenditure incurred out of the accounts by the government is termed as public expenditure, irrespective it is on the citizens, on the social community work, on the economic overheads, or on itself also, that becomes a part of public expenditure. So, by definition we can say that public expenditure refers to expenses of the government, which the government incurs for its own maintenance as well as for the economy as a whole, as I told you, for the economy as a whole as well. So, basically when we talk of public authorities, public authority means center, state and local government, especially with respect to India. If I talk of, we have a quasi-federal economy, we have a hierarchical federation, federal fiscal federalism. What we deal with is center, state, local, and local its municipal panchayat. So, as we go down the things happen. So, public expenditure is done either in protecting the citizens or promoting their social and economic welfare. So, basically level of public expenditure also depends on government's growth. So, any expenditure that is incurred by the government is termed as public expenditure. But public expenditure was not of the scenario what we see it today, what we visualize is today. See, it also has a development history, because as we were dealing in the subject matter of public finance, you must have remembered that I told you there was market failure, and at that time when the role of government was limited, so scope of public expenditure was very narrow. Rather, the classical economists think that what they thought was, okay, public expenditure is a wasteful expenditure. Why to spend on individual, why to spend on citizens, why to spend on economic growth and development by government. So, we have divided the public expenditures scope as two views, one is the traditional view and the other one is the modern view. As you can see, you remember the traditional view when we talk of Smith, Ricardo, all these were the traditional economists. There is a concept called laissez-faire concept, because traditional economists deal with, they thoroughly thought was that government role is restricted. They followed the laissez-faire policy. Laissez-faire policy basically means non-intervention of government. That means the government is not interfering in any policy measures, trade, commerce of the economy. The only role of the state, of the government was restricted to justice, police and arm. That means security, defense was the only role of government. Apart from that role, the government does not have any say in the economy. So, when the government was not a welfare government, when the role of government was restricted to security mechanism, to law, order, justice only, then the government expenditure what they thought was wasteful, and rather that money can be better utilized by private persons than government, because it was a capitalist form of economy. So, money they always thought would be better utilized by private individuals, and government expenditure should not incur. So, but when we look at this concept, you will find that classical nature of public expenditure is quite unrealistic. How would the community grow? How would the development take place? There are various items of expenditure that needs government attention, that needs money, so that the economy can grow, it can develop, it can progress. So, the view which was taken up by the traditional economist was treated as quite unscientific, and with the failure of free market mechanism, the role of government started increasing. See, we have discussed in earlier lectures that when the free market mechanism failed, what happened was the role of government gradually increased, the state activities gradually increased. Now, the government was not only restricted to law, order, justice, rather government was, apart from this, although they were taking these activities also, but new activities added to their bag. Now, they were into policy formations, now national defense, national progress, monetary policy, fiscal policy, economic growth, development, dealing with unemployment, trade, commerce, educational facility, community facility, social services, everything. Now, the scope of government was widening day by day. So, what modern view argued that state activities are increasing, so the state intervention should increase. As I told you, the economic activities of state increased in many ways, and it was now realized that the nature and volume of expenditure has an important effect. That means, on nature basically means on what we are spending, and volume means how much we are spending. See, for example, we have also discussed public good. Public good is what? Public good is given to the individuals to satisfy certain requirements, necessities, and public good is out of public expenditure. So, the nature, on what type of items the government is spending, whether it is a revenue expenditure or capital expenditure, it is on infrastructure or education, and apart from nature, how much volume of expenditure is there. That became quite important. So, let us also quickly discuss different views or items or ideas given by economists as classification of public expenditure. So, first let us go through the idea of Adam Smith as to how he categorized public expenditure or classified public expenditure. As he was a classical economist, we all know the views remained like government should be restricted to law and order, justice, maintenance. So, what he said was that public expenditure should be on maintenance of law and order, that the situations in the economy should be amicable, the law and order should not be distorted and disturbed in the economy. Justice should be there, judiciary should be active, basically law and order, justice, basically what he was saying was judiciary should be active, and on judiciary public expenditure should be incurred, public utilities should be maintained, and sovereignty of the government should be there, that is the control, and government should spend on its own maintenance and administration. So, that certain amount of public expenditure was only required as told by Adam Smith. However, A.C. Pigou, what he did was, he said public expenditures are in two forms, or classification of public expenditures are of two types. One is transfer and the other one is non-transfer. Now, what does this transfer and non-transfer mean? See, transfer means that beneficiaries means on whom the expenditure is being incurred, because A.C. Pigou's concept of welfare economics is also very important. So, he said that beneficiaries on whom the expenditure is being incurred, they are not contributing at all anything towards expenditure. That means, if the government is giving grants for certain projects, if the government is helping with grants to deal with certain crises, or pensions if the government is giving, social security is the government is giving in the form of say state police is there, central it is there, traffic police is there. So, various maintenance of social security is there, interest payment what the government is doing. We are not contributing as beneficiaries. See, we are investing in government funds, and for that we are getting interest. So, whatever expenditure in the form of interest the government is doing, the beneficiary is not paying for that, or if the government is taking a loan from inside the country or outside the country, and in return of loan, in return of capital, the government is paying interest. That interest is transfer in the sense that the beneficiaries are not giving or contribute anything for that interest, or pensions, grants and security. The other one is non-transfer. Non-transfer, reverse of transfer, that the beneficiaries are contributing into it. Whatever goods and services the beneficiaries are receiving, they are contributing for that good or service. That means, education as a service, you are contributing. If the government is providing education, a certain amount of fees is being given by the beneficiary. If we are into a government college or government school, we are studying. Post office services, the beneficiary is paying. With every individual utilizing the post office services, the expenditure increases, and the beneficiary is paying the certain amount for delivering maybe of speed post or registered or any kind of post office services, for judiciary or purchase of raw material by the government. So, all these include your non-transfer services. So, there are direct returns to the government for expenditure incurred, basically in non-transfer services. Dalton said कि if a return is realized from public expenditure, it is purchase price. As the name suggests, if public expenditure is being incurred by the government on goods and services, and the government is earning on those goods and services, it is a kind of non-tax revenue to the government in the form of purchase price, where merely a transfer payment is done for no returns from the beneficiary to the government. It is a grant, like an educational institute can get a grant, or expenditure on free hospital services can be there, cheap food for poor people, financially low background people you can provide, the government provides, so that necessary items of health, necessary items of food are there for the people. So, all these are called grants as per Dalton. Professor J.K. Mehta said, you must be aware of his concept of wantlessness what he gave, but he said certain expenditures are incurred in groups and cannot be controlled by individuals, like any kind of insurance facility that is goes for a group insurance is a kind of public expenditure. So, individual is not controlling or receiving, rather it is a group activity. That means individual or groups have to pay for such services from public authorities. Now, an important classification of public expenditure, what we see today, is the budgetary classification. Budgetary classification, public expenditure is classified into revenue expenditure and capital expenditure. Now, what is revenue and capital expenditure means? It is basically on the nature of public expenditure. Nature implies what? Revenue expenditure is any expenditure incurred by the government that has a recurring nature. Recurring means again and again continuously we are paying, the government is paying, government is giving, government is spending, like subsidies, interest payments, both of them constitute a revenue expenditure. Now and then the government, every time an individual buys a particular product, the subsidy is given to that individual, or whenever there is a time of payment of interest, maybe in the form of securities or bonds or any other kind of external loan what the government has taken, the interest payments are given. So, it is a revenue nature. Any kind of pension the government is providing, salaries what the government is providing, all those constitute revenue nature. Opposite is capital nature. That means expenditure on capital goods. Capital expenditure is basically that expenditure that is used for capital assets, maybe buildings, long term projects, construction of hospitals. Basically, capital expenditure is on infrastructure, what we say, to understand or make it simple. These expenditure help for economic growth, for economic development and creation of assets. Further creation of assets, that expenditure is used. Revenue also is helping. I am not saying revenue is not helping in the form of various facilities, but from revenue the creation of assets is not so as far as the capital expenditure is concerned. Now, development and non-development expenditure holds another classification of public expenditure. See, certain expenditures like we say economic services, social services, community services are those expenditure. See, if we are spending on education, we implies basically if the government is spending on education, then what it is building in the form of scholarships. The government sees when the government gives scholarship, those scholarship are of revenue nature. So, it is a part of revenue expenditure, but that scholarship is also developmental public expenditure. Why so? Because if the government is giving scholarship to individuals at say school level, certain scholarships are given, then at higher education level scholarships are given, government is giving scholarships for promotion of research work. All these help in development of human capital, which will ultimately result in growth and development of the economy. So, expenditure on economic services or health services, health, if you are an individual is keeping good health, services are available, the working capacity of an individual, the ability to work enhances, and economy, he or she will be contributing to economic growth and progress. So, basically development public expenditure is any expenditure that contributes towards economic growth, economic development. However, non-developmental expenditure, as the name suggests, these expenditures are important in like pensions or defense expenditure or civil services administration, interest payments. These expenditures are important, but these expenditures are not contributing to economic growth or development as much as the development expenditure is contributing. So, both expenditure holds importance, both kinds of expenditure may be revenue or capital, but the basic difference is development expenditure is contributing towards economic growth and development, howsoever non-development expenditure is not contributing. Now, when we look into the data in detail, like if I say I get an expenditure data, central government or state government expenditure data for the past 30-35 years, what we witness in that data, we see there is a rising trend of public expenditure, that continuously the public expenditure is growing. Now, let us go through the reasons, some of the reasons that are contributing for growth of public expenditure, why public expenditure has grown with the passage of time. First and foremost being the concept of welfare state. As I told you, for promotion of social well-being, economic well-being of the citizens, for political well-being of the citizens, the government is spending. Why so? Because state has been established as a welfare state. So, this new concept of welfare state, in which the state wants to envisage the people, the state wants to work for the people, the state wants to provide various necessary facilities to the people, the public expenditure is the result of this welfare state. So, the new concept of welfare state. Then we have war and national defense. See, earlier also the government role was to guard, to protect the boundaries, law, order, justice, and most of the countries now see have huge expenditure on the cost of war and even the preparedness of war. Not only war, for the maintenance of defense, with the latest equipments, with the latest tools, with the latest trainings, everything requires public expenditure. And God forbid if the war happens, then many resources are diverted towards war to provide them with the resources so that our soldiers can fight on the borders. So, public expenditure has been increasing with the passage of time on account of war and even preparedness of the war. Few examples are, we all know the few examples that happened in the economy. So, the cost of defense has phenomenally increased, as I told you, because of new and sophisticated equipments. Even the training, awareness, all these things it required is not only the equipments, the training also requires public expenditure so that the equipments can be properly used. Then growth of population, with respect of India, when we see the population has grown. So, the concentration of people in towns have necessitated many levels of government activities. So, growth of population, like if the government is giving subsidy, say suppose. So, any kind of subsidy, if earlier say 1000 people were availing that subsidy, now 5000 people are availing that subsidy with the growth of population, because income being the criteria for giving the subsidy. So, the number of heads or number of families who are availing that subsidy have increased with the passage of time. So, amount of subsidy has increased of the same subsidy. Now, provision of economic overheads is also a reason for growth in public expenditure, like maintenance of overheads in the form of transport, communication. See, communication facilities have enhanced day by day, use of internet facilities have enhanced for providing that facility, although private companies are also providing, but government holds an important position for providing these. Infrastructural development, transport facility development, mode of transport development, not on the roadways only, airways as well as waterways also. The mode of transport is increasing with the passage of time. The facilities in the transport has been increased, enhanced with the passage of time. The connectivity of cities have increased because of better development of roads. So, what happens? Accessibility to market of the business has increased. So, provision of economic overheads enhances the public expenditure. Even generation of electric power, slowly we are turning towards solar panels, its installation, the benefit given, with the passage of time it has increased. Another reason was urbanization. See, with the passage of time what is happening? People are migrating from rural to urban areas, and when the people come and settle in urban areas, the requirements change. Even though the new urban habitants are springing up, so urban population necessitates the government for the problem associated with education. Proper education facilities should be there, be it school, be it colleges. Health facilities in the form of CHC centers, in the form of hospitals in that particular district are required. Water, proper potable water should be there. We all know groundwater depletion is there. but we want taps, hand pumps are there, proper water arrangements should be there, so proper water coming in the houses should be there. Pollution is a huge issue in front of government, like see even environmental hazards, pollution maintenance, we are using AC, ozone layer depletion is there, waste is increasing day by day, although the government is using measures for collection of waste, various municipal corporation have done this waste collection, early morning the vans are coming and collecting waste, still all these facility needs to be given. That leads to increase in public expenditure. Education and human capital, see government wants human capital should be developed, we should, the youth, the children of the economy should get education. So, for this government provides educational services, technical training for skill development of manpower, technical training is being given so that a pace can be kept with the latest challenges, like latest technological changes, and these are even given free or at a subsidized rate. So, that also causes expenditure to the government. Adoption of economic planning, so that the socio-economic arena of the economy is developed, has led to increase in public expenditure. Agriculture, India being an agriculture economy, the modernization of agriculture, the green revolution, presence of HYV seeds, better irrigation facility leads that people are not dependent on rain nowadays. See, there are many researches, surveys, when we go through, even one of my students did his dissertation, and what he came out with that is, for the cropping pattern in a specific area, people are not dependent on rain. Even the small farmers are not dependent on rain, the irrigation facility has increased so much. So, all these facility, scientific agricultures, fertilizers, all these things have led to increase in public expenditure. With the pace of industrial development, to meet that pace, credit facilities, materials provided, rapid industrialization, transport facility, proximity to market, all these things have to be kept in mind by the government, have to be provided by the government, and government is providing all these facility, leading to an increase in public expenditure. Public goods and utility in the form of roads, street light, parks, railway station, post office, flood control, famine is there. So, many kind of public goods and utilities are being provided by the government. And we all know maintenance of law and order is there. With the growth of population, urbanization, complexities of modern life, socio-political law and order problems are increasing with the passage of time. For that, patrolling needs to be increased, proper justice facility needs to be provided, proper stations should be there. So, everything is requiring public expenditure. Apart from these, what we say as public expenditure, or we say along with these, few reasons that also lead to increase in public expenditure, what we discuss in public policies is, as given by Niskanen, that presence of bureaucracy has led to increase in public expenditure, or what they say, presence of interest groups, pressure groups, unproductive profit seeking groups, they all contribute to increase in public expenditure of the government. Now, let us discuss some theoretical aspects of public expenditure growth, as means the theories which say why public expenditure has increased, justified the increase of public expenditure, and what is the pattern and how it has increased, or what should be the limit of public expenditure. So, when we are dealing with theoretical analysis of public expenditure, we will be dealing with three theories. One is the Wagner's law, second is the Peacock-Weismann law, and third is the Colin-Clark hypothesis. So, let us start with the Wagner's law. So, as I told you, the rising trend of government expenditure has been explained. Wagner, Weismann, Peacock, all they have given is why the public expenditure has increased, the pattern of growth of public expenditure, and basically they have given a hypothesis, because that is an educated guess, like what can be the probable reasons why the public expenditure has increased, and expenditure has a tendency to grow with growth of national income. So, let us discuss these hypotheses one by one. First, let us discuss Wagner's hypothesis. Adolf Wagner was a German economist, basically German political economist, and he propounded an empirical law of to analyze the trend in growth of public expenditure. Extensively, he collected data for a specific say for 1992 years of time, and then he 1892 somehow in 90s he collected data, and what Wagner argued was that a functional cause and effect relationship exists between growth of industrializing economy and relative growth of public sector. That means what? As the economy progresses, the public expenditure is also increasing. As we grow, as we develop, as the industrialization is taking place, the public expenditure would affect that. So, he explained what? That the cause of growth of public expenditure is basically increasing state activities. The government is getting, the state is getting involved into many activities of the economy. The role of government is increasing, the responsibility of government is increasing, therefore, public expenditure is also increasing. So, what Wagner said that it is intensifying as well as extensifying. That means the role of state, the government activities are not only increasing intensively, but extensively. Now, what do we mean when we say intensive and extensive? Intensive and extensive basically means that the earlier roles are further intensified by the government because population is growing, because urbanization is there. So, law, order, maintenance, justice, everything is getting intensified, number of people coming under its ambit are increasing, and new roles are also coming to the government in the form of overheads, economic, social, political overheads, community services, human capital development, everything. So, new roles are also getting included in the government's public expenditure, public welfare. So, the roles are extensifying as well. So, what did Wagner said? That public authorities has continuously increasing in trend due to, basically he gave three reasons why the role is intensifying and extensifying. First and foremost being the expansion of traditional function, as I told you, this is intensifying, means mainly defense, administrative justice, because earlier the role was restricted to law and order and maintenance and justice and administration. So, maintenance of law and order, provision of social overheads. So, the coverage variety of such functions have gradually increased. Defense expenditure has grown rapidly, as we have discussed, because of change in military arts and science, requirements of latest tools for maintenance, training programs for maintenance, thorough training, intense training is being done to our soldiers so that they can guard our boundaries. So, the traditional role is expanding. Apart from that, this is extensive expansion, new roles, new coverage, new functions of the government are being added in the form of education, health, low cost housing, subsidized provision of food, fertilizers, like we have fertilizer subsidy, all subsidy, low cost food is there, agriculture inputs in the form of fertilizers, old age pensions the government is giving, any kind of sickness benefit the government is giving. These all are the new functions that are coming in the ambit of the government. And one of the expenditures of government was on public goods. Now, the sphere of public good is also widening. The need and necessity to provide social and merit goods through budgetary allocation is being recognized by the modern state. So, these includes construction, maintenance of public parks, public health care facility, better facilities are there, construction is going on. We can see in the for the past 10-15 years what we see, the construction, the roads have improved, the expressways are being made. So, construction is in a huge amount, hospitals are there, educational institutes are there, public parks are increasing. So, all these are the expanding sphere of public goods. So, the role of the government is not only intensifying, but extensifying as well. Now, what Wagner said was that what are the forces that have an impact on demand and supply, because of which the role of the government is extensifying and intensifying. So, what factors what he dealt was like few factors that have an impact on both demand and supply of public expenditure includes growth of population and density. Population per head count is increasing and the density of population is increasing. In urban areas, more density is there. Capital income is also increasing. So, people are spending more, people are requiring more, the public expenditure is slowly increasing. As far as the demand side is concerned, urbanization is there, industrialization is there, structure and composition of population, youth are there in the economy, for them skill development is important, educational facilities are important, then the job requirements, training them to match the job requirements also is a task, a huge task before the government. Labor is getting specialized, so the requirement has changed. So, these factors are impacting the demand side, therefore, the public expenditure is enhancing. As far as the supply side of the public expenditure, changing scale of production is there, quality of product is required, intergovernmental transfers are increasing. See, by finance commission certain amount is transferred from central government to state government. I am just giving you an example for this. There are many other also transfers as intergovernment transfers. So, it has increased, the percentage has increased with the passage of time. So, that also gives a load to the public expenditure. Quality of production is also enhancing, the type of product available have improved day by day. So, see what he tried to tell in the graph is that on y axis we have taken the per capita output of public goods, and on x axis we have taken the real per capita income, and time here is being the third dimension. So, what Wagner basically tries to state is that when we move on the PG1 line, see when we are moving on the PG1 line and we compare two time periods, then what happens, the public good as a part of the income. See, PG is public good, Y is the per capita output, or what we say the capital income, what we are saying. So, this is equal to the earlier time period, but when we move with on the third dimension and time periods change with the passage of time, what we see that public good provision by the government, that means per capita output of public good as a part of real per capita income has been greater than the earlier time period. So, what Wagner tries to say ki with the passage of time, when the national income is increasing, when the government income is increasing, when the capital income is increasing, the government will spend more and more and more on public goods in the form of state activities, because state activities are increasing day by day, and for growth, for development, for progress in the economy, the amount of expenditure on or by the state has increased with the passage of time. However, a quick look at the criticism given by L&T Peacock and Jake Wiseman was that interdisciplinary approach in its analytical framework, it lacks that interdisciplinary approach. It is talking of economics, but no impact on is witnessed on the social front or political front or psychological impact. None of these impacts are inclusive of that. Therefore, the applicability is limited, only the economic parameters are met, like public goods are provided by the government through increase in public income. And this theory also ignores the influence of war on government spending. If a war is there, what would be the impact on spending of the government? So, Peacock Wiseman gave a theory under an empirical study of expenditure of UK in the period of 1890 to 1955. What they mainly emphasized was that okay, public expenditure is increasing, but public expenditure does not increase with a smooth pattern. That means what? That public expenditure does not increase in a continuous manner, but in jumps and jerks or a step like fashion. Jumps and jerks basically means they say it is not a smooth or a equal trend line when we plot public expenditure, rather there will be somewhere like this, the public expenditure is increasing. There is a jump, there is a step like pattern when the public expenditure is increasing. Now, what they said was that increase in public expenditure, what pattern was witnessed by them, basically they talked of three effects or three facts that were involved in depicting such pattern. So, first and foremost being the displacement effect. What Peacock-Wiseman said was like public expenditure does not increase in a smooth pattern, like gradually slowly the government will increase the public expenditure. Certain social disturbances occur, a shock in the economy is there, maybe supply side shock or a demand side shock in the economy, that leads to a sudden increase in public expenditure. So, what I told you, it increases in jumps, jerks, not a smooth progression is there. And when the public expenditure increases because of certain shock in the economy, because of disruption in the economy, because of some distortion in the economy, what happens is, now the public expenditure has increased, now what will the government do? Now the government would fulfill this public expenditure by changing the taxation pattern. So, the movement from older level of expenditure and taxation to a new and higher level is called displacement effect. From older level of taxation and expenditure, like expenditure has increased and certain amount of taxation in the next time period has to be increased to finance this expenditure. So, people develop a tax tolerance limit. So, this is called the displacement effect. So, when major social disturbance end, no motivation to exist for the society to return to a lower pre-disturbance level. So, new level of tax tolerance is developed. Inspection include basically the inadequacy of revenue in comparison to the required expenditure. See, there is an irony in front of the government that revenues raised through taxation cannot be increased as and when required or as per the 100% discretion of the government, because certain other things creep in, we know evasion will start, and public expenditure cannot be reduced after a certain point. You cannot ask just vanish the presence of public goods or certain kind of expenditure. So, inspection effect basically inspects the concept of deficit, what we say nowadays, that inadequacy, that the revenue raised are not adequate to finance the public expenditure. That is what they learnt about. And there is always a transparent and apparent tendency of the central government to become an increasing proportion of total public sector's economic activity. Basically, when we talk of center and state government, center has more resources and center has more responsibilities to fulfill. So, of the total proportion of public sector economic activity, center bears a larger burden of the activities. So, there is an increasing proportion, and that was called the concentration effect of Peacock-Wiseman. So, basically Peacock-Wiseman, what they told was that public expenditure is increasing, public expenditure is not increasing with a smooth progression, rather in jumps and jerks it is increasing, and the reason for increase in public expenditure in jumps and jerks in such a pattern are the three effects: displacement, inspection and concentration effect. See, it is very clearly given in this graph. On x axis we have taken the time, and on y axis we have taken the public sector revenue and expenditure as a percentage of GNP, that is the gross national product. and you can see it is not increasing in a smooth progression, a jump, a jerk is there. So, as soon as the expenditure increases to this point, and why this expenditure is increasing, why there is a jump and jerk, because of the social disturbances in the economy. The government, like see, COVID came and we see what we saw was there was sudden increase in public expenditure of the government on various medical facilities, on various vaccinations, on providing basic necessity foods to individuals, to group of individuals. So, it was a kind of social disturbance, or suppose a war situation arises or any other kind of pandemic is there. So, suddenly there was rise in public expenditure. Now, after a specific period of time when the public expenditure has increased, the displacement effect would work and a new plateau will be achieved, which will be definitely higher than the earlier plateau. However, this was also beset with certain criticism, like earlier empirical tests have been found to be deficient. They found that this hypothesis was not correct. Many tests, what they did was, for this hypothesis, that found that this hypothesis was a deficient hypothesis, it was not covering each and every aspect. And secondly, public expenditure and public revenue may increase regularly also as a part of structural changes, as a part of growth, as a part of development. It is not necessary that certain disturbance only lead to increase in public expenditure. State being a welfare state for the economic growth and development of the economy, as a part of structural changes required, public expenditure and tax also grows. Then came the Collin-Clark hypothesis, which was the critical limit hypothesis, a very small hypothesis that was developed by Collin-Clark immediately after the World War II. And this hypothesis concentrated with the tolerance level of taxation. What conclusions that empirical data collected by them during that war dealt with? That Collin-Clark pointed out that in an economy, inflation emerges when share of government sector as measured in terms of other taxes and other receipt exceed 25% of the aggregate economy. Basically, to be simple and precise, I will say when 25% was the critical limit given by Collin-Clark. They said if the public expenditure and taxations in the economy remain below 25% or at 25%, then the adverse effect of expenditure, the adverse effect of taxation would not creep in. That means, the amount of expenditure in the country, taxpayers' ability to pay more taxes, if that limit is increased, becomes exhaustive. So, the only limit given by Collin-Clark was 25%, that 25% should be the limit of economic activities of the government, state activities, and expenditure should not increase beyond this limit. So, public expenditure beyond this limit means disincentives to producer, fall in production due to taxation beyond tolerance. So, basically it rests on two institutional factors. What are these factors? That when tax collection of government exceeds critical limit of 25%, the income earners are badly affected by reduced incentives, decrease in productivity, ability and willingness to work, save and invest is adversely affected. And even if the balanced budget is given, increase in public expenditure would constitute rising demand. So, as a result, inflation is generated from maladjustment between demand and supply. So, 25% was the only limit. If we quickly go through the theory evaluation, we find what? Comprehensive and critical review of efficacy of the theory of public expenditure has been provided by Harber and Gandhi, and what they said that a uniform theory cannot be applied as nations have different economic scenario, different economic conditions. So, a uniform theory of 25% critical limit or pattern of expenditure or reasons for growth in expenditure cannot be applied, and no certainty is there that all the independent variables are alike in the nation. As I told you, macroeconomic indicators vary in different nations, and depending on the socio-economic framework of the economy, cultural setup, political setup, type of citizens, the dimensions, the value of the nation changes. Now, when the public expenditure is incurred, there are few canons given by Findlay-Shiraz as taxation given by Adam Smith. Similarly, Findlay-Shiraz gave the canons of public expenditure. Basically, canons means principles that should be kept in mind. So, what Shiraz said, other things being equal, public expenditure should bring with its important social advantages, which what kind of advantages? Increased production, preservation of social whole, internal and external disorders should be reduced, inequalities should be reduced. So, basically the target of public expenditure should be maximum utility in the form of public interest. Few canons given by Shiraz include canon of benefit. We have earlier dealt with the principle of maximum social advantage of Dalton and Pigou we have studied. So, basically equitable distribution, social justice, maximum welfare, principle of maximum social advantage should be tried and reached. The canon of economy is also given by him. What he says is, since we know the resources are limited with uncontrolled wants are there, so the revenue is limited with the government and it should be used in a productive manner, so that further creation of capital and assets is there in the economy. Every expenditure incurred by the government should have a proper sanction, so that accountability of that expenditure is there. So, authorities should spend money only after obtaining prior sanctions, and proper system of auditing and inspection procedure should be there at the end of every financial year, so that the government or the department which has issued public expenditure is accountable for what they have done. A canon of surplus was also suggested by Findlay-Shiraz, that the aim should be that to generate a surplus, that means the income should be more than economy. Basically, income more than expenditure is not the exact criteria of surplus, it is try to live within the means. Try to live within the means basically means we should try and cater our expenditures to or according to the income generated by the government. Some other economists also propounded few canons like the canon of elasticity. The expenditure policy should not be rigid, it should have an elastic character. As and when required, the expenditure policy can be amended. There should be neutrality, that means no effect on production and distribution of activities. Canon of productivity should be there. Public expenditure should increase the productivity, like skill development. If the expenditure on skill development, the employability of the individuals would increase, their productive capacity, their marginal productivity would increase. So, expenditure should be targeted towards that, and the pattern should be designed so that the glaring inequalities of income and wealth are minimized. That means, the canon of equitable distribution should be there. The expenditure should be more diverted towards the individuals, the citizens who have a paucity of resources, who have scarce resources, who are not getting the required necessary items of consumption. The expenditure should be diverted towards them more, so that inequalities can be reduced. So, if using this expenditure concepts canon, expenditure is done, then let us discuss effects of expenditure. 2-3 headings we will be discussing. First is on the production. See, if the ability of people to work, save and invest increases, like if the government is spending on education, vocational training, health services, social security services, infrastructural development. So, people's ability to work, save and invest increases. Apart from this, if unconditional cost benefit reduces while conditional public expenditure increases, then willingness to work, save and invest will also increase. Fine. Reallocation of resources is also there, like research and development for growth and progress, investment in benefit for future generations, direct investment is there, that will have a positive effect on public expenditure. When we talk of effect on distribution, any public expenditure which increases the income of the people will have a favorable distribution effect, and any expenditure that aggravates inequalities will have a adverse distributional effect. In the form, if the government is investing on creation of small scale industries, create employment in backward area, rural kind of products are promoted, or specific products of a particular area are promoted, those people are getting employment, their products are reaching to the economy, public utilities are being increased, so effect on employment is positive. However, when we talk of economic instability, if the via expenditure it is curbing the inflation, see if too much money supply is there in the economy and people are having higher purchasing power, the consumption expenditure would increase, leading to increase in aggregate demand. So, by using fiscal policy, the government can control or manage certain amount of money supply, can reduce the purchasing power in the hands of the people, because too much inflation is not good for an economy. Deflation can also be removed and price stability can be achieved. So, these effects include effect on distribution. So, dear learners, today was all about expenditure. What is expenditure? Types of expenditure. What are the theoretical aspects of public expenditure? Reasons for growth in public expenditure and effects of public expenditure. That means, if the canons of expenditure are included, what will be the effect that will be there or witnessed in the public expenditure. So, these are the suggested readings which will help you to know more about public economics. So, learners, thank you for today. We will be meeting in the next lecture.